Hey, I'm the creator of Omneris and the Whipping Witch, and today I am designing yet another character for my circus troupe of OCs. If you haven't seen the other two OCs I've designed already, go check out those videos after this one. So, as I've mentioned in the previous design videos, I want to draw a bunch of new characters that will make me go out of my comfort zone. And so this character will be manipulating water, which is something I do not know how to draw, or at least I didn't know how to draw it before making this video. Now I kind of can draw it, and I also thought that it would be neat if the water took the form of animals. And for this video I focused on birds. In my last video, I learned to draw horses, which is another animal I wanted to learn how to draw. But yeah, that means that I basically had an understanding of four-legged animals, but birds have wings and, well, it's kind of different, so I thought it would be a good next step. So yeah, here is my water manipulator elf. And to draw water birds, I needed to learn to draw birds. So, like for my horse study, I started with anatomy. So I drew a bird, I drew the skeleton of the bird, the muscles, and then I drew a few birds from references, from pictures I found. I had like random small bird, a raven, and an eagle. And before working on this study, I was afraid of drawing wings. And I studied wings, and they're actually really easy to draw and really fun to do, so I'm not scared anymore. That's already working. And once I could draw birds, I needed to figure out what water looked like. So I did a few little drawings / paintings on my iPad, once again from references, trying to find the motifs and the reflections. And then I drew a pair of hands and a water bird coming from them, because that was the whole idea of this character. And I was pretty satisfied with this, so the next step, as for my previous two characters, was drawing them in my sketchbook. But this time I decided to make more of a finished illustration, and I used my paint markers instead of my water-based markers. So, now that I'm through with the design portion, let me explain a little what I did. So, I'm trying to have diversity in my characters in body types and personality too, I suppose. And when I was thinking about this character in comparison to the other mostly male characters I want to draw later on, I thought that I wanted him to be chubby, and I also thought that it looked nice with the water concept, because water is bubbly, I guess, and round and flowy, and yeah, and he also doesn't do much physical stuff, I suppose, because in the lore of Omneris, elves manipulate, well, they don't manipulate the elements, they convince the elements to do what they want to do, and, well, they convince the magic by singing. And so he sings. And you know, to sing well, you need to have a lot of room for air to get in, I suppose. So it's fitting. And also, elves have this kind of weird thing where the beauty of the person is determined by their voices and the way they sing. So they really don't care about what you look like, they only care about what you sound like. Because I wanted to explore diverse beauty standards. And so I imagined that this male would have a peculiar voice, I guess, because I kind of want this circus to be a family of outcasts, and all the characters, the people in it, come from different species, and it's this found family thing because none of them fit in the family they were born, I suppose. And so I imagine his voice would be a bit peculiar, not ugly per se. I mean, he seems to be doing fine with the magic, but just different enough that he wouldn't fit in an elvish choir, because elves sing together, and in a choir you don't want anyone to stand out. I think I've never actually been in a choir, but yeah. Now for his design, I actually tried to use different color palettes for the different characters, and I used a forgot the name, triadic color palette. Is that the one? So basically it makes a triangle in the color wheel with green, purple and orange. Purple being the color I use in every single one of my characters. And I used green that leans toward the blue because that's my favorite shade of green. And it just, well, it fits well. And in the end it's also the color I used for the water of the piece. So the birds and the ground, I guess. And so his main outfit is this bluish green and this vague drop shaped sleeves and poofy shorts. I was trying to keep in mind the shape of water while designing his outfit, and then I also added the feather half skirt to recall the birds that it likes to call forth from the water. So yeah. Once my character was filled in, I started drawing the water, which is another experience drawing with paint markers as it is in my iPad. I skipped most of the process because you can't really see what I'm doing because my hand is in the way, and it's also really repetitive. And I actually spent 2 hours coloring this piece, which is more than I spent on my other spreads in my sketchbook. And if I speed the footage too much, my hand gets really jerky and it gets really weird. So I just skipped some footage. That's actually the first time I did that. I was so scared. But yeah, the left side of the spread is pretty much done. So now I can finally draw my water birds, which was really terrifying. Because I can find references for water spreading everywhere and drops and stuff like that, but you can't really find a reference for water bird, and I didn't really know how to make the wings look like water. So in the end I was just like, okay, you know what, you have the context, you know that color is water. I mean, you should know that color is water, and I'm just gonna put all the color, put the highlights, and hope for the best. And yeah, I don't know if it reads as water, if it actually looks like water, but I think you can kind of understand that that's what's going on, especially since the body of the bird really reminds the shapes and the of the water when you look at it from the top, I think. At first, when I took out my markers, I was expecting to find something a bit bluer for the water, and I didn't have anything. I mean, I had outright blue, but I didn't need to be blue because my color palette needed to lean more toward the green, and so I just used my green markers, which ended up looking really nice. So yeah, I'm glad I did it anyway. Now at this point, I'm just jumping around using a different marker every 5 seconds. So yeah, I was always finding somewhere where I forgot to put a color in, and so I had to go back to the previous marker and then pick the current one again, and then the next one. And let me be honest, I just put random blobs of color for the reflections and the highlights. I took the purple, the skin tone, and the orange I had on the character, and I just put it everywhere on the water, assuming that it would make reflections. I didn't really think about the physics, I guess, in this scene. I also did not think about where the light was coming from. So I was just going off, like, imagining the light was coming from the top. But I don't know what kind of light it is. And if I did this illustration on my iPad, I might have tried to do some colored lighting to give some mood to the picture. But I already had so much going on with the reflections in the water, and I didn't really know how to do that with my paint pens. It's not really a subtle arts supply. Like, it's opaque, and it's got it is a soft nib, but it's still not the most fine one. It's kind of hard to do really tiny details. So yeah, I finished my main bird, and now I just drew the same thing for the two tiny ones. Oh, by the way, I called him a water manipulator, but elves actually control, and once again, don't control, they convince the magic, and they can basically influence anything that has to do with nature. So they influence water, but also the earth, the vegetation, the air, and fire too, I guess. So it's elemental magic, basically, but they are not confined to one element, but they do specialize in one. Some elves are stronger in one element and can actually hold their own, while they would need help to influence another element. So, yeah, this guy is very strong with water, but can technically do something else as well. But since he's so good with water, I imagine he's the one pouring the drinks at the end of a show for the other performers and the other members of the circus troupe. He's like a cool uncle, I guess. Very chill and very easygoing and chill and nice. And I imagine he'd be the one who kind of adopted the little jester girl I designed my first video of this series. And he likes to feed her too, even though she doesn't eat. She doesn't remove her mask, and her mask doesn't have a mouth. She doesn't eat. Anyway, I added some ground that is covered in water. Because why not? Then I did some droplets flying everywhere. And I was getting tired, and this was nearly the end. And on the one side, I felt like I could keep going forever. And on the other, I was so eager to be done with it. Because the water looks detailed, like there's a lot going on there. And I spent so much time on it. And yeah. So I was done with the color, and I added some line art, and I also removed that part of the footage because you couldn't see anything again. But just on the character to tighten everything up and to clear things. Here is my finished elf circus performer. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for another character design.